maybe I should let Eric Bentley answer it for you. I just got this email. Mr. Bentley just got an award, the Thalia Award in Seoul, Korea, which is a brand new award with a lot of money attached to it for his writing about the theater, his lifetime of writing about the theater. And he just sent out to, not necessarily just to me, I'm sure that everybody on his email list, his speech that he gave, which is it's really kind of fun. And he actually talks to he's talking about theater criticism in particular, and he says, he tells the folks in Korea that there are two distinct functions and two kinds of writers to watch. In New York, anyway, the first function is that of consumer guide. Theater's expensive, as a consumer guide. Then he says, these are newspaper writers, and newspapers want their drama critics taken more seriously, as if they were experts to be envied of their expertise, or even prophets to be revered. And so for this, as for other reasons, a certain falsity enters into newspaper criticism. It's hard for it to be on the level, and it usually isn't. To make matters worse, it adapts itself often to the hit and flop mentality of commercial theater. So he's, down on the commercial critics. He goes on to say personally he wouldn't mind if newspaper critics didn't exist. Let the shows just open. He wouldn't mind if stage directors didn't exist either, he says. The 20th century welcomed them, but they've outstayed their welcome and now are a hideous imposition. And so you wait for him to get to the good part, like what is good theater, criticism. And he says that is the critique of theater at the level of the best literary criticism. He goes back into the past to name some distinguished names like Stark Young, George Dean Nathan, Kenneth Tynan, whom he calls his elders, and then his juniors, Robert Brustein, Gordon Rogoff, and Richard Gilman. Mr. Gilman just died the other day. And he talks on, and he says, for one thing, that even those great writers that he just named, when they published their theater criticism, and his too, nobody noticed. Nobody really noticed. The only reason they're able to say that these are great theater critics is because their criticism has been collected into books, which people finally pay attention to, and that's his thesis about it. Then he finally gets to the idea of theater reviews, if they're good for anything, my theater reviews, he said, were above all contributions to a discussion. And that's his sort of criterion. It sounds simple, but a discussion with whom? With anyone who might read them and turn over in his mind what they say. Presupposed then is a living theatrical culture in a living general culture. And that's sort of the secret. I agree with that. It's part of a discussion. If you ask me, the theatrical act is not complete just by putting on a play, putting on a performance, and it being received by the audience. The discourse that follows is a crucial part of it. Theater is a forum where people come together, they deal with ideas, often with specific issues, as well as general ideas. And unless the discussion that follows, unless the discourse that follows brings it into, it's bringing it out of the id into the ego, out of the subconscious into your conscious mind, where you can put words to it. This completes the act of theater. And that's why writing about the theater is so important. That's why arts journalism is so important. That's why criticism is so important. When you lose that crucial discussion part, the part that he finally comes to and mentions casually, but it's an incredibly crucial part. And I believe that arts journalists are completing the act of theater in this discourse, and it's an extremely vital point. Okay, just my favorites. Okay, Don Shuey, a New York critic who you may know, he wrote a pretty good biography of Sam Shepard, and he still writes for the. Used to write a lot for the Times before it changed a lot, but he writes it. He wrote a wonderful piece in an actor-focused issue that we have, which was about sort of the erotics of acting, and it was, in a certain way, it was just sort of a catalog of actors, male and female, that he felt erotically drawn to, pretty hilarious thesis. And it was a great article because, you know, the truth is that acting is a lot about, it's about the body and it's about eroticism. That was a great article. I thought that was really a breakthrough article that talked about acting in a really fresh and exciting way. That was one of my favorite articles that we published. I don't regret any of the times that we've made people mad. And we had a design-focused issue one time, and Marjorie Bradley Kellogg, one of the finest designers in the American theater, wrote an article where she tried to document that designers were the poor stepchildren of the theater when it came down to salaries. You know, she wasn't just talking about, you know, working conditions and so she was documenting how, you know, designers subsidize the theater through the things they have to buy out of their own pocket and so forth. Yeehaw! That just, you should have, the LORT managers, you know, the League of Resident Theaters, who negotiates the contracts for designers, they were furious. They were all over us, you know. And the reason being that, you know, we presented it under the kind of headline that looked like perhaps it was the magazine's position. Well, that means it was Theater Communications Group's position as well. And LORT was furious, you know, so we had to soothe ruffled feathers. But the fact is that what she said, she touched a really strong nerve, but it was true. It's true. Just sort of deal with the responsibility part sort of in a classic journalistic way. To a degree, you know, we're an organ of reportage. You know, we're reflecting the reality that is there. But obviously the choices we make are going to either valorize or diminish, you know, certain aspects of the theater. I guess it depends to some degree on who's, you know, who's wielding the pen, you know. If the people who ran TCG and ran the magazine really had a much more conservative idea about what theater should be, that the well-made play was the, you know, was what it was all about and was the future of the theater, then that's what the magazine would reflect. But I think we're all lucky that that's not who's there. We've had an enormously positive response to it, as you might expect, because for one thing, you know, for years we've been covering an art form without color. You know, how are you going to do that? You know, and designers especially, I think, felt left out of the bargain because we couldn't really show the beauty and the aesthetics that they worked on. But so the word of mouth response has been enormously positive. But as our director of publications likes to say, the growth of the magazine has been organic, by which he means very slow. but the subscriptions are you know, edging up and moving up slowly, and it's going to be a question of, you know, a year is not a long time in the life of a publication, so it's going to take, yeah, it's too soon to really recognize the trends, but we have high hopes that more people will be interested in the magazine because it looks better and it looks new and it looks different. It's much more accessible. We've, you know, there are short articles in here that you can read between one subway stop and the other, as well as the big old 8,000 word academic articles that I still like to run, you know, and that sort of thing. So, so we'll see.